Hey there, nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and welcome to another edition of Necro-Mondays, where we showcase weekly Necromunda Battle Reports with our series Anarchy Road, our narrative campaign that is set within the Ash Wastes of Necromunda, and it's a vehicle-based campaign as well. And this is Battle Report number 73. It is a standoff scenario that's fought between two relatively brand new players, two Necromunda. One of them is Iron Major. You guys know this guy very well. He's the guy who creates all the terrain on our channel. He also plays the dwarves for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And he also played Corpse Grinder Cults for a little bit in our last Underhive War campaign for Necromunda. But we also have a brand new player. That brand new player is the Kiddo. The Kiddo is my youngest sister. I actually got two sisters, and she is the youngest one. She's also married to another member of our gaming group. His name is Big Puka. He's the guy who always plays the Chaos Legion of Khorne. She's playing the Prophets of Rage, a Cawdor gang, and Iron Major's bringing Thundrik's Profiteers, a Venators gang. So I'm really super excited to see this game, exactly how it works. This is actually the very first time the Kiddo has actually played Necromundas for the very first time, and you gotta admit that the Kiddo is actually pretty much a champ on this one. When she came into play in our campaign, at first everyone was like, "Ooh, man, this is your very first campaign. You know, do you want us to take it easy on you?" She's like, "Nah, forget that nonsense." She says, "I want to play. I want to learn how to play, and the only way I'm gonna be able to do so is if I, play it full blown." So this is her very first game of Necromunda, so it's really cool to see her actually engaging in the game as well. So that being said, ladies, we're going to play some background music real quick. As the music is playing, we'll show you photos of both gangs as well as their rosters. If you want to see exactly what they're bringing for this one, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
So the scenario rules for this one is standoff. The objective is to score the most victory points by taking enemy fighters out of actions. You earn 3 victory points for taking out leaders, 2 points for champions, and 1 point for every other fighter that exists. Whoever has the most victory points by the end of the battle report is the winner. Because of this, the hostile environments of the Ash Wastes means that gang fights in the Ash Wastes can happen in desolate places to the hovels or shanty towns, the open road, and the only modification in this scenario is the rewards portion. So scattered throughout the battlefield are D3 plus 3 loot counters, which the players will alternate placing upon the battlefield, and those loot counters are worth D6 times 5 credits. In this battle report, there are 5 of them deployed on the battlefield. At the same time, for rewards for credits, the winner earns D6 times 10 credits, while the loser earns D3 times 5 credits, and in case of a draw, both gangs earn D6 times 5 credits apiece. For experience, each participant earns 1 point of experience, and the winning gang leader earns a bonus experience point, and you also earn 1 point of experience for fighters who collect loot counters as well. And of course, the standard experience points for taking enemy fighters out of action always stands as always. Now, for reputation on this one, the winner earns plus 2 points of reputation, and since both gangs are fighting each other for the very first time, both earn 1 point of reputation automatically, and of course, if any gang bottles out, they lose that point of reputation. So the scenario rules over, let's go on and talk about the battle plan real quick. Alright, so here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, both Iron Major as well as the Kiddo are playing on a 4x6 table. Iron Major is deployed on the near side of the table, while the Kiddo is deployed on the far side of the table as well. As you see, we also got loot counters spread throughout. We have 2 loot counters on the left-hand side. One is on the base of that radar dish. The one is inside of that crate on the left-hand side. We have two more located in the middle of the foxhole, right there on the right-hand side of the battlefield, as well as one on the roof of the car in the center of the battlefield. And the very last one is tucked up in the upper right-hand corner with that tower fragment up there as well. Now, as for their tactics on this one, I actually talked to both players before they actually played. For Iron Major, his plan is to basically script the right-hand side and grab loot counters in the upper right-hand corner and then swoop around and try to engage the kiddo. Meanwhile, the kiddo, my little sister, she basically told me that her plan is to actually head to the left-hand side towards the crater as well as the radar dish and pick up loot counters and then try to snipe at Iron Major's plunder by open fire with her heavy crossbows. She's got 2 heavy crossbows in this gang list, and she plans on just lobbing crack grenades as well as burner sticks directly at his vehicle, and hopefully she could destroy him that way through attrition and actually just keep her distance the entire time. So with the battle plan over with for both sides, let's go directly to deployment. Alright, so first of all, let's talk about Thundrik's Profiteers. I gotta talk to you a little bit about Iron Major's plan on this one. It's actually kind of cool how he did it. So first of all, he's got Bjorgen Thundrik, who's a hunt leader. He's a squat with mesh armor, flamer, Rocketancy special, fighting knife, as well as the overseer skill. We then have the Kazgan Drac Skewer, his hunt champion. He's got mesh armor, a man catcher, as well as Rocketancy special, as well as her fixer skill. We have Enric Ironhell, a hunter who's got mesh armor, a Rocketancy special, a fighting knife, as well as a combat shotgun with shredder as well as salvo rounds. We have Dead-Eyed Lund, another hunter who's got mesh armor. He's got a plasma gun, a Rocketanski special, a fighting knife, as well as a specialist skill. We have Garrett Allenson, who's a hunter who's got mesh armor, also got some Rocketanski special and a sword. He is the gunner on the plunder because he operates the giant grabbing claw. And then we have Erlem Elderguard, who is another hunter. He's the driver of the plunder. He's got a mesh armor, a Rocketanski special, as well as an axe. Now, the reason why this is a little bit different is because my buddy Iron Major decided to do a guild alliance right off the bat, and it was interesting because what ended up happening is that according to the guild rules, whenever you send a group of fighters from the guild with you, they have that band apart special rule. So you asked me that because these guys are not technically part of his gang because they're part of a guild, does he have to pay starvation costs for them? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, no, he wouldn't, because these guys are guild representatives, not members of his gang. So because of that, he can fill these guys with additional bodies, but not have to worry about paying for their upkeep because they're not part of his gang. And once we did that, that just kind of uncorked the bottle, because now all my friends in our gaming group now are thinking the exact same thing. Maybe they should get criminal and guild alliances to beef up their gangs, and at the same time, not have to worry about paying for them. So we'll talk about that later on, though, as the game goes on. He decided to make an alliance with the Water Guild, is what he decided to do. So he's got 3 fighters on his crew. He's got Jacob Anadre. He's a Master Nautican. He's got mesh armor, a needle pistol, stiletto knife, bio booster, stim slug stash, the step aside, overseer, and leader special abilities. We have Islay the Seeker. She's a Siphonite. She's got mesh armor, a cult icon, a needle rifle, stiletto knife. She's also got the dodge as well as a champion special rules. Then we also have Thrash, who's a Subnautican. He's got a hazardous suit, armored undersuit. He fights with open fist and the berserker skill. And because he's got a Water Guild alliance, he's got a slopper automatically for free called the Water Boy, who is equipped with a fighting knife as well as a slopper skill. Now, the vehicle they're driving is the Plunder. It is a large class hull type vehicle. It's got weapons cache with thunder sticks. He's got boarding spikes, enclosed crew, as well as tool locker upgrades. He's also got tracks on this vehicle with spare tracks. He's also got a turret mounted grabbing claw. So this thing is absolutely beast. Alright, so up next we got the Kiddo from the Prophets of Rage, and that's their vehicle. That vehicle is called the Cathedral of Rage. It is a large type hull vehicle. For the hull, it's got weapons cache with burner sticks. They have polecat boarding pikes, 2 crow's nests on board as well. They also got boarding spikes to repel boarders, as well as enclosed crew and spare parts chests, as well as a tool locker. And at the same time, they also have tracks in this vehicle as well. So they get +4 from their intelligence checks for this one as well. And she also decided to go with Crow's Nest, which is actually kind of cool. The Crow's Nest rule basically pretty much states if there is no cover between, if the Crow's Nest is taller than any cover surrounding a vehicle or a fighter, then the cover rules do not apply. And let's talk about her gang real quick. So first of all, she has a leader, Ada the Conflagrant. She is a leader who's a flak armor, hand flamer wielding, cult icon carrying, commanding presence gang leader. She also has 2 champions. In the back is Gisbamin, the Exemplar. He's a champion armed with flak armor. He's got a heavy crossbow with crack and frag shells. He's also got a stub gun with dum-dum rounds and the rain of blow skill. And up in the front is Malaya, who is another champion. She's got flak armor, heavy crossbow with frag and crack grenades, shells rather, a stub gun and dum-dum rounds, as well as the parry skill as well. And located in this crew, we got Lanky and Jackalome. They're both gangers armed with flak armor and pole arms with autoguns. We have Nabakar, who's another ganger who's armed with flak armor and a pole arm blunderbuss with grape and perjuration shots. We then have another ganger named Mumblestock, who's a driver of the vehicle. He's got flak armor, a reclaimed autogun, stub gun, and dum-dum rounds. And then we have two Juvies, Filthy Mildrotha as well as Junibed. Both those characters armed with stub guns as well as dum-dum rounds. And that pretty much makes up the kiddos deployment on this one. So with deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and my friends roll off for initiative to see which of them will be going first. So we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and the Venators get to go first, so Iron Major gets the initiative on this one. So the first thing he does is a group activation. He activates his gang leader, Bjorgen Thundrik, who also does a group activation with his driver, Irlorn Elderguard, as well as Gerald Allison, the gunner for this vehicle. And he actually uses a overseer ability. So first of all, the driver, Irlorn Elderguard, he drives up right between the vehicle right there on the left hand side as well as the foxhole on that one, so that way they're within range with their grabbing claw. Then Gerald Allenson then takes one of his basic actions to use the grabbing claw to grab the first loot counter off the roof of the black vehicle, and then Iron Major uses Bjorgen's Thundrik's overseer ability to have Gerald Allenson pick up the second loot counter that was right in the middle of the foxhole there. So now right off the bat they got two loot counters in the very first turn of the battle. Meanwhile, the kiddo then activates her driver, Mumblestock. Mumblestock basically takes two simple actions real quick in order to turn 90 degrees, so that way she can make her way to the left-hand side of the battlefield. And she did a group activation with that one using Ada the Conflagrant in order to do that. So Mumblestock turns 90 degrees, and then she orders her two champions, Malaya as well as Gispin the Exemplar. They both open fire with crack shells from their heavy crossbows directly into the plunder. The first shot misses, but the second one lands. Also managed to put 2 damage directly onto the hull of the plunder as well. So first blood goes up to the Cawdor on that one. And that pretty much takes directly to the end of turn number 1, because pretty much everyone just got activated for that most part. The only thing that really ended up happening is that Iron Major did activate the rest of his crew over time. They basically took intelligence checks and eventually just kind of healed up the damage that was done on his vehicle by making repair actions. And that pretty much ends turn number 1. As you can see, the kiddo is up on the top of the table getting ready to skirt to the left, while Iron Major is going directly in the center to grab loot counters. So once again, that takes directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Venators, and the first thing Iron Major does is activate group activation with Bjorgen Thundrik, who does a group activation for, once again, the driver Jorlin Elderguard as well as Gerald Allenson. Jorlin Elderguard does 2 sets of actions. First is a turn 90 at 45 degrees and then drive forward the normal moon allowance, and then does another set of movements directly towards the upper right hand corner to get within range of the grabbing claw for the third loot counter, and then Gerald Allenson operates the grabbing claw to grab the third loot counter on the top there. So just like that, the plunder is now living up to its name by carrying 3 loot counters on the vehicle. So with that, the kiddo goes next. She does a group activation with Ada the Conflagrant, her leader. Does a group activation for Mumblestock the driver. Mumblestock the driver does double movements directly towards the very top of the loot counter there in the middle of the crater, so that way they can go by and scoop that up. At the same time, she also activates Malala the champion, as well as Gisbamin the Exemplar. Both those guys basically open fire with their heavy crossbows directly into the plunder. Unfortunately for the kiddo though, one of her shots missed. The other one does manage to hit but fails to wound, so because of that, the vehicle from the plunder is perfectly fine. Iron Major decides to skip his turn because he doesn't plan on using any of his fighters, so goes right back to the kiddo again. The kiddo then activates Junibed, who's one of her Juvies. The Junibed takes a basic action to dismount the vehicle and another simple action to move up to secure the very first loot counters and planning on bringing it back during her next turn. So with that takes directly to the end of turn number 2. As you can see, Iron Major is pretty much sticking to his plan of just grabbing up as many loot counters as he possibly can before engaging the Cawdor. At the same time, the kiddo, she's doing exactly the same thing, heading to the left-hand side to grab their loot counters as well. So far they're just kind of evading each other, trying to grab up some treasure, and be interesting to see exactly what happens when these two decide to collide. So that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 3, and both my friends roll off for initiative to see which of them will be going first. So with that, we go directly to the top of turn number 3, and the Cawdor managed to get the initiative on this one. So the kiddo goes next. Once again, she does a group activation with Ada the Conflagrant, who then basically decides to use her commanding presence ability to order, Junibed the Juvie. The Junibed the Juvie runs back directly and boards the Cathedral Rage, bringing their first loot counter. At the same time, Mumblestock does a double move directly towards the bottom of the left-hand corner of the battlefield, where at the same time, Filthy Madritha, another Juvie, dismounts the vehicle with a basic action and does another basic action, simple action to go up to the second loot counter. Meanwhile, at the same time, I believe one of the champions, I believe it was Malala, I believe so it was, opens fire with their heavy crossbow directly into the Plunderer. Unfortunately for him, though, he misses his shot. Meanwhile, Iron Major then goes next. He activates his leader, Bjorgen Thundrik, who does a group activation once again. He decides to use the Overseer ability for the driver, Irelorm the Elder Guard. That guy does a 2 series of double movements, heading directly towards the center of the battlefield from the upper right-hand corner. And because he's doing a group activation as well, he then activates Deadeye Lund, who's a hunter's arm with a plasma gun. The guy takes a basic action, aim with his plasma gun, and an eighth of the basic action, he open fire with it, aiming directly at the tracks of the Cathedral Rage, which is actually kind of interesting because it's the first time my friends decided to actually target different systems on a vehicle. Most of the time my friends have been shooting at each other's hulls, but this is actually the very first time the Iron Major has actually shot at something else. He decided to shoot at the tracks first and try to immobilize the Cathedral Rage. So as you can see in this photo, he decided to open up with a maximum shot, so that way it's caused strength 6, and the reason why is because the tracks are actually toughness 6, so because that was a 4 up to wound, managed to successfully wound it. The kiddo was unable to armor save it, so because of that, put 3 wounds directly on the tracks, which is super dangerous because the tracks only have 4 wounds. So if he manages to blow up those tracks, the kiddo will have to spend turns in order to do a replacement action by replacing with her spare track at the same time, which means the vehicle will be immobilized and also open to being attacked, which is actually all kinds of crazy. The kiddo then goes next. I believe she activates Gisbamin the Exemplar, who's a champion, who does a group activation. I believe it was Jacqueline, one of the gangers. Jacqueline does a intelligence check with a 4 bonus because of the spare parts chest as well as a tool locker, manages to heal a wound on the tracks for the Cathedral Rage. Meanwhile, Gisbamin the Exemplar, he opens fire with his crossbow, aiming at the tracks of the Plunderer for belonging to Thundrik's Profiteers. I apologize, he doesn't open fire on the tracks, he opens fire on the turret that holds the grabbing claw. That's what he decides to do. And the reason why is because the grabbing claw only has toughness 5 and the crack shell has a wound strength of 5. So because of that, managed to hit as well as wound the track as well. Unfortunately, Iron Major was unable to stop it with his armor save, so because of that, the turret suffers 2 wounds, which is basically 2/3 dead. The turret only has 1 more wound left and another wound on top of that grabbing claw, and that grabbing claw will be inactive for the rest of the battlefield, so that part was kind of crazy. So not to be outdone, Iron Major decides to activate his Water Guild members. The first thing he decides to do is to activate the leader, the Master Nautican, Jacob Anedre is his name. He's the Master Nautican. He uses his Overseer ability in order to double activate Thrash, the Subnauticans. So as you can see in that battle on this table here, that boy, he just runs directly across the battlefield, traveling something like 16 inches, just landing a couple inches short of getting to the Cathedral Rage. At the same time, Islay the Seeker, who's the Siphonite, comes out of the vehicle as well, tries to open fire with a needle rifle, but unfortunately for him, though, he fails his shot, so not much happens there. So the kiddo then goes next. She activates Nebakar, who is one of her gangers, who's armed with a polearm blunderbuss with grape and purgation shot. She opens fire with the purgation shot directly at Thrash, which is the Subnautican. She knows that she's not going to be able to wound him too much, but her plan is try to hopefully catch that guy on fire, so that way he runs after being shot at. Unfortunately for the kiddo, though, she misses her well, she does manage to hit him, but her shot fails to wound and also fails to catch the Subnautican on fire, so he is perfectly fine. And for the rest of the turn, pretty much what my 2 friends end up doing is just activating fighters to take intelligence checks in order to repair their vehicles. So as you can see in this photo, by the time it's all said and done, Iron Major has healed up the wounds directly onto his turret for his grabbing claw, so he's perfectly fine. And the kiddo does exactly the same thing. I believe she does this with her Linky, one of her gangers, as well as I think one of her juvies. So because she's able to heal up the last 2 wounds on her track as well, so both vehicles are perfectly fine. So with that, that takes directly to the end of turn number 3. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, Thrash the Subnauticon is hauling across the battlefield in order to board directly onto the Cathedral Rage and engage those guys in close combat. At the same time, both Jacob and Idre, as well as Islay the Seeker, they're both dismounted as well, trying to make their way closer towards the Cathedral Rage. Meanwhile, Iron Major's Plunder is kind of located on the right-hand side. At the same time, the Kiddo is trying to grab both for loot counters and planning on preparing to defend herself from a boarding action from that Subnauticon. So with that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 4, and both my friends roll off for initiative to see which of them will be going first. So that takes directly to the top of turn number 4 for the Venators, and Iron Major decides to activate Thrash first. And the reason why he's able to do so is because he's within 12-inch range of Jacob and Idre, which is the Master Nauticon. The Master Nauticon does a group activation. He uses his Overseer ability to make sure that the Thrash actually has one set of double actions to charge into the vehicle, does a successful boarding action, and then spends the other rest of the actions in order to do double attacks, which is absolutely insane. So because of that, the very first person that Thrash fights up against is Nebakar, which is the Ganger armed with a blunderbuss and a polearm. So with the first set of charge actions directly into Nebakar, things did not go according to plan for the Kiddo whatsoever. In the end, I believe the Subnauticon managed to get off, I think, 4 attacks ended up happening. Yeah, basically gets 2 attacks, 1 to charge, and also gets 1 more for the Berserker skill as well. So because that, managed to hit Nebakar 3 times and wound him 3 times as well. So Nebakar gets knocked out 3 inches off the vehicle because of the knockback ability from the Subnauticon. At the same time, puts 2 serious injuries and then an out of action result directly onto him. So because of that, Nebakar will need to roll up on the lasting injuries table after the end of their scenario to see exactly what happens to him. For his second series of actions, again, he charges once again. This time, the Kiddo sends Filthy Madritha up against the Thrash to engage him in close combat. Needless to say, Thrash had no problem putting the hurt directly onto Filthy Madritha. Managed to hit her 4 times and wound her 4 times as well, with a flesh wound, and 2 serious injuries, and I believe one of the last one was an out of action result. So because of that, she will need to roll up on the lasting injury table as well. So that part was insane. Now, as for the right hand side there, if you look in the right hand side, we have Malala there, which is one of the champions with the heavy crossbow. What ended up happening is that because it was a group activation with Jacob and Idre, which is the Master Nauticon, he also does a group activation with Islay the Seeker, who basically takes a basic action to aim with the needle rifle that character carries, and another basic action to open fire. Not only does he manage to hit Malala as well, also managed to wound the character. Unfortunately for the Kiddo, she fails her toughness check, so just like that, she rolled an injury result. She rolled an out of action result on that character as well, so Malala does go out of action, and she'll need to roll up on the lasting injury table as well. And just like that, in 1 round of activations, 3 members of her gang are currently out of action, so things are not looking really good right now for the Kiddo. However, there is some kind of mixed results on this one because with the firing of the needle rifle, Islay the Seeker, which is the Cyberknight arm with the needle rifle, she does roll up an ammo check as well as 1 hit with her gun. So because she does manage to fire a shot, but she's also out of ammo as well. And since this weapon is also a scarce weapon, it's going to be very difficult for her in order to reload her weaponry. So from there, the Kiddo goes next. She does a group activation with Ada the Conflagrant, who uses her Commanding Presence ability as well as Cult Icon to activate 3 additional fighters in order to fight against Thrash. So Ada the Conflagrant, the leader, charges directly into Thrash as well. Same thing with Lanky and Jackalum. They're both gangers armed with polearm autoguns. At the same time, Gispamin, the Exemplar, who is also a gang champion, all 4 of those guys go directly into close combat with Thrash in order to take him out. Unfortunately for the Kiddo, when it was all said and done, the only thing she's able to do is actually put a wound directly onto Thrash as well. And the reason why is not because of not being able to hit. They got all these bonuses because they had a group attacks going up directly against Thrash. The problem was that Thrash has a toughness of 5, and all these guys had strength 4 attacks, which means the highest they could have that roll was a 5 up in order to wound him. And throw in the combination with the Subnauticon's 5 awards armor save, and not much really got through. They only was able to put 1 wound on it, so that part was kind of sad. So with that, we go with Iron Major next, and Iron Major decides to do another group activation once again. He activates his leader Bjorgen Thundrik, who then also orders his driver Yorlin Elderguard to move up twice using normal moon allowance. But then Bjorgen Thundrik uses his Overseer ability directly onto the driver Yorlin Elderguard and does a double action to go ramming right directly into the Cathedral Rage and catch that thing in a T-bone type of ram. Now, in the end, both vehicles do take hits because none of these vehicles have any ramming prowess on them. One hit went directly onto the Plunderer, but luckily for Iron Major, though, it failed to wound, so his vehicle is perfectly fine. However, he was able to put, I think, 3 hits directly onto the Cathedral of Rage, and I also believe, 3 hits on the Cathedral Rage, and also managed to wound it 3 times as well. Poor Kiddo, man, she was unable to save her armor saves on that one, so because that, they take a lot of damage to the hull. To make things worse, what ended up happening is that then Gerard Allenson, the gunner on board the Thunder, opens up with the Grabbing Claw directly onto the Cathedral Rage. Now, the Grabbing Claw causes D3, Strength 10, -4 AP hits on the vehicle, and unfortunately for the Kiddo, she wasn't able to stop and managed to put all 4 wounds directly onto the hull as well. So that part was all kinds of bad. Managed to go eat right through the wounds on that part for the hull of the Cathedral Rage, so ate right through all 4 points for its wounds. And at the same time, also put a flesh wound on it, dropping his toughness from 8 down to 7. So things are not looking very good right now for the Kiddo. So now to be outdone, Kiddo then activates Junibed, which is one of her juvies. Her character does a boarding action directly onto the Plunderer and engages Deadeye Lund directly into close combat as well. Unfortunately for both those fighters, though, not much really happened from there. Basically, Junibed failed to wound Deadeye Lund for the most part. Deadeye Lund, though, does manage to hit as well as wound Junibed, but in the end, though, it's ended up being a flesh wound because basically when the Rocketancy Special, which is a sawed-off shotgun, it's also got the sidearm trait, so you can use it for close combat as well, so not much really happened between these two for the most part. So for Iron Major's next activation, he activates his champion, because Kazgan Draxskewer does a group activation with Enric Ironhill. Kazgan the Draxskewer, the champion, he charges directly into the back of Junibed and engages her in close combat as well. So we'll talk about that combat result here in a second. In the end, what ended up happening is managed to put the last wound directly onto Junibed and put a serious injury onto that juvie. At the same time with that group activation, Enric Ironhill, who's a hunter who's armed with a combat shotgun, he does a double action in order to board successfully directly onto the Cathedral Rage. Also managed to secure one of the loot counters that are located on the vehicle as well, and looks like Iron Major planning on having that guy go right back onto the Plunder in order to escape. So with the end action phase over with, we go directly to the end phase, and like I said before, during the action phase, Kazgan Draxskewer managed to put a serious injury directly on the Junibed, so because of that, Junibed went crashing face down to the ground and was currently bleeding out. During the end phase, the Kiddo rolled for injury dice for Junibed and once again rolled another serious injury, so because of that, she is still laying on the ground and she is still bleeding out, which is a bad spot for her to be in because all it needs to be is a simple action for the crew to grow and they'll be able to take her out of action. So things are looking really bad right now for the Kiddo. So with that takes directly to the end of turn number 4, so here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, Thrash is still on board the Cathedral Rage, engaged in close combat with the members of the crews of the Cawdor on there as well. At the same time, the Cathedral Rage has eaten up all 4 wounds on its hull and also lost 1 point of toughness right now due to flesh wounds. Meanwhile, you got Kazgan Draxskewer as well as Deadeye Lund still engaged in close combat with Junibed. Now, in case you guys are wondering, the reason why these fights are taking place on the sides of the vehicle, it's just because I don't have enough room to we don't have actually enough room to put these guys on the vehicles to take the photos of the fights. So that's why they're taking place on the ground. Technically speaking, they're supposed to be on the vehicles. We just don't have the room for that for the most part. At the same time, as you can see, we got the 2 members of the Water Guild as well right behind, the Master Nautican as well as the Siphonate, Jacob and Edre, as well as Ile the Seeker in the back right there on the right hand side. So with the end of phase turn number 4, we go directly to the top of turn number 5, and both of my friends roll off for priority and see which of them will be going first. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of turn number 5, and the Venators managed to get the initiative on this one. So what ended up happening for the first activation is that my friend Iron Major decides to activate his gang leader Bjorgen Thundrik, uses his group activation in order to activate a couple of his fighters. First off, what ended up happening is that he decides to use his Overseer ability directly onto Kazgan Drakskewer. Kazgan Drakskewer moves up to the vehicle for the Prophets of Rage and actually does a boarding action real quick in order to board on board for his first action. And then for his second action, he claims loot counter number 5, then goes right back directly onto the Plunderer as well. At the same time, Enric Ironhail also takes loot counter number 4 and goes back on board the Plunderer, bringing that loot counter on board, so now they'll be able to secure all 5 loot counters. And then finally, the very last action, Deadeye Lund basically does a coup de grace directly onto Junibed, puts that fighter out of action. Junibed will need to roll up on the lasting injury table to see exactly what happens to her. Meanwhile, for the kiddo, she then does a group activation once again with the leader Adak the Conflagrant, who also does a group activation with Gizbamin the Exemplar, as well as Lanky, and I believe Lanky as well as Jackalum. That's right. So all 4 of those fighters decided to throw all their attacks directly into Thrash. In the end, I believe it was Jackalum, the ganger with the polearm. He was able to put the last wound directly onto Thrash and plate up all 3 of his wounds. So just like that, Thrash does go out of action as well. He will not need to roll up on the serious injury table because he's just an ally. He's basically a hanger-on. So not much in terms of bad is going to happen for that guy for the Thundrik's Profiteers. So with that, we then go to Iron Mage's next activation. Now with all 5 loot counters directly onto the Plunderer and the vehicle living up to his name, Iron Mage then activates the driver Yorlin Elderguard, who does a double movement backwards, traveling about 8 inches straight back in order to back away from the Cathedral Rage, so that way they can have their loot on board as well. As you can see in that photo, Enric Ironhail as well as Kazgan Drakskewer, they're both on board the vehicle when they go. Deadeye Lund, however, has been totally abandoned and left behind, but at the same time, though, Iron Mage is trying to save his money is what he's trying to do. So with that, we go directly to the next activation because pretty much all the fighters to the Cawdor guards are pretty much done for the most part for all their activations. All that's really left are the Venators real quick. So what ends up happening is that Iron Mage decides to do a group activation with Jacob and Edre as well as Islay the Seeker. Jacob and Edre is going to open fire with his needle pistol. He's actually within 9 inches of his needle pistol open fire directly into the Cawdor gang members as well. Meanwhile, as you can see here, Islay the Seeker, though, she can't shoot because she basically has a scarce ammo for needle gun. So in her situation, because she filled her ammo roll, got the ammo roll, she's completely out of ammo for this battle. And unfortunately for the kiddo, Jacob Anedre, the Master Nautican, rolled a 6 in order to hit with the ballistic skill for his needle pistol and rolled a 6 in order to wound. Unfortunately for the kiddo, when she went to roll for her toughness check, she rolled a 4, so because of that, just like that, Jackalome, the ganger, basically goes directly out of action as well. She rolls injury die for him and rolled up a skull on that poor character, so because of that, that guy automatically goes out of action, and he'll need to roll up on the lasting injury table as well to see exactly what happens to him. So with that, we go directly to the end phase, and the first thing that the kiddo has to do, because she's lost 5 members of her gang, she has to take a bottle test, and unfortunately for her though, she fails her bottle test, so because of that, all of her fighters will need to take cool tests the next turn to see if they stick around, and at the same time, she also loses a point of reputation from bottling out. And with that, that takes directly to the end of turn number 5. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, the Plunder has gone straight back away from the Cathedral Rage, carrying all 5 loot counters with it, leaving Deadeye Lund all by himself right there in the middle. At the same time, you also got the 2 members of the Water Guild, Jacob and Edre, as well as Islay the Seeker, just kind of by themselves, just kind of standing out there in the open, while the Cathedral Rage only has its driver, as well as 3 members of the Cawdor left standing. At this point, then my little sister, the kiddo, decides to call the game. She decides to surrender because she only got 4 members of her gang still left standing, and she really doesn't want those characters to lose any more than they already have. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that takes directly to the end of the game with a victory for Iron Major and the Venators of Thundrik's Profiteers. So that being said, we're going to go directly to the post-game and for the after-action report because this game is now officially over. Alright, so first of all, let's go and start with the Prophets of Rage. This is the kiddo's gang for House Cawdor. She suffered 5 injuries on this one out of action results. Those are Malala, Jackalome, Nebakar, Filthy Madritha, as well as Junibed, and unfortunately for the kiddo, all 5 of those characters suffered grievous injuries. So because of that, they all go directly into recovery, and they will miss out on their next battle report, which is over half the gang, which is all kinds of bad for the kiddo for her very first game. To be honest, though, you got to hand it to the kiddo, though. The kiddo was this was her very first game in Necromunda. So if you see her making some mistakes like deploying fighters and doing certain things, that's why. It's her very first time she's actually playing Necromunda for the most part. So because of that, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for her. So You know what, though, all things considered, though, she took it like a champ. She just kept on fighting, didn't give up until it was basically, kind of pointless for her to go on because of all the casualties she took. But she kept on going the entire time, kept on fighting during her best. So that part's got to be really cool. So I got to give it to the kiddo on that one. For advancements, none of the members of the gang actually advanced during this time, and during their territories, which she had 2 members go out into the wasteland. She rolled a 5, which meant that they discovered mutant animals. So because of that, they're able to hunt and feed the entire of the gang. So because of that, there is no fear for starvation. However, she was only able to recover 6 credits, but she also earned a point of reputation at the same time. At the trading post, she earned 5 credits from the scenario as well as 6 credits from the wasteland, giving her a grand total of 11 credits, which she put directly in the stash. She didn't have to worry about paying for a starvation total because she found animals in the wasteland, so she's perfectly fine. In the end, she did manage to repair the hull of the Cathedral of Rage with her champion as well as her leader, managed to bring up the 1 toughness that it lost earlier, so now it's back up to full toughness. However, the hull only has 1 wound on it right now out of 4, so because of that vehicle will be fighting handicapped the next time it does battle. For her reputation, she earned 1 point from her territories as well as 1 point for fighting against Thundrik's Profiteers for the very first time. However, she did lose 1 point of reputation for bottling out, giving her a grand total of 2 points of reputation. Her new record now is at 0 wins as well as 1 loss, and her new gang rate now is at 2,010 points. So let's go and talk about Thundrik's Profiteers. In the end, they basically had 1 character who got wounded, that was Thrash, who was the Subnauticant, but he makes a full recovery no problem because he's basically a mercenary from the Water Guild. For advancements, none of the members of the gang advanced during this time. However, for their territories, they did roll up 1 for reputation for their wasteland, as well as managed to secure 13 credits. And at the same time, because Iron Major won this scenario, he found a farm for his territory, which means that he automatically feeds his entire gang during the post game because they have a farm to do that with, and at the same time earns himself 20 credits as well. So the farm is one of the most valuable pieces of terrain of territory in this campaign because you can feed your guys every single turn, not to worry about paying for starvation points, which is all kinds of awesome. Now, during the trading post, he earned 115 credits from the 5 loot counters he was able to capture. He also earned 20 credits from the scenario as well as 30 credits from Kazgan Draxskewer's fixer skill, as well as 33 credits in total from his territories. That brings it to a grand total of 198 credits. From those 198 credits, he had to pay 20 credits directly to the Water Guild for their water levies, so to keep those guys in the alliance. At the same time, he also purchased a kill switch for the Plunderer's engine, as well as a spare parts chest to get +2 for their intelligence check for repairs. And at the same time, he also decided to hire a level 2 dedicated driver named Fagin. Now, in case you guys are wondering, dedicated driver is a vehicle upgrade. The character is basically just restricted to the vehicle. They can never leave it for any reason whatsoever. They basically have the same stats as a Hive Scum is when they end up happening. And for that upgrade, what you can do is you can purchase multiple levels for these characters when you first buy them, so that way you can roll up on the experience table twice for them. So in this case, Iron Major decided to play up for a level 2 on this guy, so he's worth 100 credits in order to do that. So you got to roll up on the advancement table twice on that one. Actually got +2 to his cool stats. Now he's cool 6. And I forgot to mention, dedicated drivers automatically come with a driving skill of the player's choice. In this case, he got demolition drivers, so that way ramming actions only counts as a basic action for him. He then took his 13 remaining credits and placed it directly into the stash. For his reputation, earned 1 point from his territories, as well as 2 points in the scenario, as well as 1 point from fighting against the Prophets of Rage for the very first time, which brings his grand total to 5 points reputation in total. His new record now is at 1 win and 0 losses, and his new gang rank now is at 2,165 points. So there you have it, guys. That's Battle Report number 73 in the books. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to our channel. That's good for this week, guys. We'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.